Alrighty, good morning, welcome back. Hope everybody had a nice weekend. Went quickly. A lot of rain, a lot of good sports stuff. All right, today, a couple of things. In Blackboard, just a reminder that from last week, you have two items that were due 1 minute ago, technically. Lake Michigan fixed, following the skills we learned last week, and the girl fixed, following the skills we learned last week. So if you don't have those uploaded yet, I'll give you a grace period of 8:15 today and today only. Otherwise, they're always due before the start of class, so make sure you're aware of that deadline. All right, today, Learning Plan 3. I have turned on. This is week 3 for our Monday classes, which is strange. Today we're going to go through chapter 3 in our textbook. Can you not get past what I have you locked out?
No, yeah.
Oh, you have something else going on. You can. You just have to be a hard for yourself. I'm sorry, I can hold it back.
Oh no, that's an interesting.
Yeah, you hold the button down and count to like 5 until it goes off, and you keep it for a while, and then you turn it back on. And hopefully now you'll come to the screen that you can log in on. Okay, so today we're doing chapter 3 in the book, working with selections. That's also what chapter 3 was in my old book. So again, I'm going to supplement some practice skills using the selection tools because I'm not entirely fond of the way the book works is fine, and we'll get through a bunch of tools and it will make sense, but I think it'll be even better when we supplement it with some extra practice. So, excuse me, did it work? Okay, good. Yep. So in Learning Plan 3 on Blackboard, please scroll down to the bottom somewhere, and there's a file called Photos for Week 3. We're going to need this for additional work. Not the book files you should already have, but we're going to need this file. So click on it, and it will download as a zip file right down here on the left, or it will go straight to your downloads folder. And in some cases, some of these Macs have the setting turned on where they automatically unzip it for you. So you're not even going to see a zip folder, or file, you're going to see an unzipped folder. If you need to unzip it, however, just go ahead and click on it. Double click on it, and that should unzip it. So week 3 photos in your download folder is where we'll find those when we need them. If you haven't already done so, make sure that you have both Bridge and Photoshop launched and ready to go. And then in Bridge, you'll be able to navigate to that download folder where you just downloaded that folder of pictures. If you want to make it easier, whenever you're in this view in Bridge, if you drill down to a file that you know you're going to use a lot, you can take it from this content window and drag it over here to your favorites list, so it's just a little bit easier to find. So that week 3 photos, I downloaded it several times, so take that, and if you want, you can drag it over here to the favorites side, and then you won't have to worry about drilling down to this folder again. However you go about doing it, double click to open week 3 photos, and this is what you should see. Pardon? Oh, yes, I will unshare and then reshare once everybody's Did it go away from everybody or no? Okay. All right, I'm going to reshare it. But it should be small and you can move it. Can you move it? Okay. Everybody okay? Mm-hmm. Got it out of the way? All right, also in Bridge, let's navigate to wherever your Photoshop book files are. And we're going to navigate, I have that over here in my favorites, which makes it easy to find. And then go into lesson 3, and there is an end file and a start file. And you can see from the view of the end file that we're going to take all of these different pieces from down below, we're going to cut them out of their background, and we're going to place them up top, and then we're going to crop down this final piece. So that's what we're going to be working with. So in your book files, Lesson Plan 3, double-click to open the O3 Start PSD Photoshop document. I'm in the crop tool by default. That was the last one I used, so that's why I have the crop marks around my document. I'm just going to click to the move tool so I don't have that visible. We're going to learn how to make selections using the marching ants, the marquee, the circles, ellipses, the rectangles and squares. We're going to learn how to use the lasso, the magnetic lasso, and the polygonal lasso. And we're going to learn how to select with the quick selection tool and the magic wand. These are all ways of selecting pixels. And in Photoshop, everything you deal with is pixels, so we need to select them. In the book files, in the Photoshop files that you downloaded from the book, and then in Lesson Plan 3. All right, so working in Chapter 3, we have Chapter 3 Start File open. And the important part about making selections in Photoshop is that whenever we put marching ants around something, whether we use the rectangular marquee tool, the elliptical tool, or any of these other selection tools today, when we put marching ants around something, all we're doing is saying, whatever pixels are directly underneath this and inside it, we want you to do something to. We want you to change those, make an adjustment to only those pixels, cut them out, move them, whatever. And in this case, we have a unique file to start with. We have one flat image. It's one background layer, right? Everybody looking at this? So everything on here is, in essence, flattened down onto the same white sheet of paper. So in other stuff we're going to do, all of these images down here are going to be their own separate files, and we're going to be cutting them out and bringing them in. All of this is on one sheet right now. So literally, when we cut out this shell and put it up here, there's going to be a hole down here because we're going to take out whatever's there. The only thing that's there are these tan pixels of that shell. All right, so the tools that we're going to use are the geometric selections, which are the marquee tools up here, the rectangular marquee tool, which also does squares if we hold what key? What makes it perfectly? Shift, yep. Elliptical marquee makes a perfect circle if we hold shift, and then we can do a single row or a single column. The next set of tools, let's go to the flyout and choose the lasso tool if it isn't already. That's the top default tool. That allows you to make freehand selections, which in some cases, when you're just in general going around a shape, that works great. In other times, it's going to be too freehand to really work. Nested in there, we have the polygonal lasso. That allows you to make a click, and then when you click next, it's connected with a straight line. So you can go around something and click a bunch of straight lines to select it. And then finally, the magnetic lasso. Basically, this works like the freehand lasso, except it magnetically clips to an edge that it detects. So if you're close enough to an edge and there's enough contrast between the two edges, like on this sand dollar down here, that's an obvious edge, it will snap to that edge as you move your mouse around for you. And then the next tool down, I'm going to go back and change that one to the normal lasso. The next tool down, quick selection tool, is the top one and usually the default. It looks like kind of a paintbrush with marching ants around it. And basically, whenever this tool is working, I don't know if you can see this little tooltip like I can, as you hover over something, it's always adding to your selection. So as you paint over this with your mouse, like they're doing in this little demo, it's adding the marching ants around it. The default behavior is to add to the selection. If you want to subtract from it, you have to add a keyboard shortcut button. Any guess what it is to subtract?
Option. Shift.
Option, yep. Shift will make things proportional. Option or Alt, if you're on a PC, will take away. It usually turns whatever tool you're using into the opposite version of it. So the zoom tool works. The minute you hold down the Option key, it works as a zoom out by default. That's the opposite of it.
And then nested under there, we have the Magic Wand tool. And the Magic Wand tool is the best tool when there are hard edges with different color differences. So if something bright is on a black background, that's a great one to use to select the dark background and then get rid of the background and choose just the thing. If something is on a white background, like this thing down here is on this whole white page of a background. If we were to select the white with the magic wand and get rid of it, everything would be on a transparent background. So depending on what your edges look like, how much contrast there is, if there's straight edges, I'm looking at this example and there's nothing in here. None of these shapes that we're going to cut out of here are like squares or rectangles or have hard lines, where that polygonal lasso tool would be ideal because you can make straight lines with it. So you're always thinking, what's the right tool? What's going to give me the very best selection so that this looks real? All right, let's rename this right away with File, Save As, and call it your name, and then we'll call it Beaches or something like that. Got a lot of beach things in it. All right, the first tool that we're going to use is that Quick Selection tool, which is the second to the last one that we just looked at. So it's nested with the magic wand and it's up one selection. We're going to come down and we're going to zoom in on this sand dollar down here. So Command plus will zoom you in, and then no matter what tool you're using, if you use the space bar and hold that down, you automatically get the hand tool and you can maneuver around to see what you want to see in your window. All right. Up in the option bar for our quick selection tool, we have a sample all layers, which is not an issue right now because we only have a one layer file, and then we have auto enhance. We're going to click that on. When it's selected, the quick selection tool creates better quality selections with edges that are truer to the object. It is a little slower when this is turned on, but the result is better. So 9 times out of 10, you're going to want to have it on here. Also, the size of your cursor, if you will. If I use this, I'm going to have to drive around quite a bit to make sure it's all selected because it's a fairly small cursor size or brush size in comparison. So if you want to make it a little bit bigger, the right and left bracket keys on your keyboard, so right above the return key, make it a little bit bigger. So basically, if you just want to watch first and then do, you just start clicking and you move around and it automatically selects the edges. If it goes too far, look at how I've selected the red and I've even bumped out. To get it to take away from the selection, what key do you think we hold to take away?
Option.
Yep, option. So hit the option key if you went too far, which you probably didn't because this works pretty well, and you basically start pushing back on these selection edges. And if it needs a little fix to go back out, click on it, make your brush smaller, and there you go. Get decent edges that way. So the first time I did it, it was very accurate. I pushed it too far to kind of show you what a push too far looks like. So the quick selection tool can be really awesome, and a lot of times it's worth a first try because it's so fast. All right. All right, so we see our marching ants. That means that all the pixels inside of the marching ants are currently selected. We now need to zoom out so that we can see this, this framed area above because we're going to move it up there. So zoom out enough that you can see that. And we're going to be moving this up to the spot marked A. So switch to your Move tool. Letter V is the keyboard shortcut that does that. And then we're going to drag this cutout area, click and drag up to letter A. And you can kind of see they have a drop shadow created behind it where we want this to go. So maybe just offset it a little so you can sort of see the drop shadow to the right and below it. And notice when we cut that out, all we see is the background layer, which is white. So we literally took it away from there. Everybody have luck with that? Okay, anybody remember the keyboard shortcut to get rid of our marching ants for deselect?
Command D.
Yep, Command D. I love that one because D select is Command D. Sometimes the shortcuts make sense. A lot of times they don't, but that's a great one.
Should I go inside or
Inside the sand dollar with the selection tool, with the quick selection tool, and then take your move tool and drag it up to letter A. All right. Next is manipulating sections. We're going to learn several different ways to do that. And we're going to learn how to work with the selection tool and then move it around as we're using it. So the piece that we're going to target next is, let's see, what are they even calling this? The plate of shells at the bottom. Not sure what I'm even looking at here. It's like eyeballs and weird stuff. So make sure that you can see this and have enough white space around that you can see the working area around it. Selecting ovals can be kind of tricky. So we know how to use the elliptical marquee tool. So go ahead and switch to that one. However, depending on where we start, let me just show you. If I start here, it's going to draw out and to the right. So I didn't start in the right spot. I'm going to have to move it, and that's a problem. I can guess and maybe get a better idea, but not always perfect. So selecting ovals can be a little bit tricky. So there's some keyboard modifiers that we can use to help with that. All right, make sure you have your elliptical selection tool, elliptical marquee tool selected. And we're going to click over this plate, but don't let go of your mouse. So if your shape isn't perfect, don't worry. So click and drag an elliptical oval over this. Do not let go of your mouse. Hold on the space bar and notice that you can move it. So now you can reposition it a little to kind of get it in a better spot. Let go of the space bar. Keep pulling with your mouse to make it better fit. If you need to reposition it again, hold down the space bar and move it over. So a combination of moving your space bar and repositioning your marquee, and then when you get it where you want, let go of your mouse. Okay, everybody get the marquee around that goofy oval? Do a fit in screen, Command 0, so that we can see our whole workspace again. Make sure that the marching ants are still on your plate of shells. We're going to use a keyboard shortcut to move these selected pixels up to the letter B spot. We're going to keep our elliptical marquee tool still selected, but we're going to hold down, we're going to come down to the shells and we're going to hold down the Command button as we're hovering over our selection. You should see a scissors, and once that's happening, go ahead and click and drag, and that cuts out those pixels, and you can bring it up to this letter B area and position it also on the drop shadow, and then let go. So instead of switching from the marquee tool to the move tool, you don't have to switch tools to move it. You can just hold down the Command button to get it to turn into a scissor and pull it up there. Okay. All right, hopefully that is still selected. If not, just watch. You can also use the arrow keys on your keyboard to nudge it just a little bit. So maybe you want to see that drop shadow a little bit better. Let me zoom in there. Using the up arrow key, you're nudging it a pixel at a time, and you can left and right arrow it. So if you ever need to just nudge your selection around, zoom in so that you have a little bit better control of it, and then use your arrow keys. If you hold down the Shift key as you arrow, you're jumping by 10 pixels at a time. So depending on how far off you are, a single pixel nudge might take forever. Usually you can get it pretty good and then just go in and nudge it a pixel or two to the right or the left. All right, if those marching ants were driving you nuts and you wanted to hide the marching ants but leave your selection active, it's still going to be an active selection. You're just moving your ants or getting rid of them. Up under the View menu, go up to View and then Show Selection Edges. Right now it's checked, which means it's turned on. If you uncheck that, it looks like it's deselected, but it isn't. It's still something you can move around. So if the marching ants are bothersome for whatever reason, you can go into this View menu and turn it off temporarily. However, 9.9 times out of 10, you want that there so you know what's going on. So we're going to go back and turn it on. Bless you. So go View, Show, and then put a check next to Selection Edges. We do really want those marching ants. And that's not just for this item, that's like how it's behaving overall. If you left that turned off, your marching ants wouldn't show up. Yep.
I think I deselected it because Selection Edges is grayed out for me.
It's not selected anymore. Yeah.
Oh.
That happened. If you unselected it or clicked away, that would happen. Okay, marching ants, everybody deselect. Command D. If we were to go and take our Move tool and try to move this, we can't. That is no longer selected pixels, and this is not a layered file. This is very strange. Normally you work in layers, and that plate of shells would be a layer above this background that you could always move around. The fact that we're working on a flat background is kind of odd, so we'll see that better when we practice with other pictures. Okay, let's go down to the bottom again and zoom in on this coral. What is this stuff? Yes, coral. It's a funny thing. So let's take a good look at this. Does this seem kind of like a nightmare to select these edges? If we had other selection tools, we're going to be going in and out and in and out and in and out. However, the thing that makes this one work really well is that it's on a solid color background, and it's super easy to select the background and then tell it, I really don't want all the white, what I want is the other thing. It's called Select Inverse. We'll do that later. But using the same tool, holding one key, we can say, select the thing that isn't the white or that isn't the solid color. So switch to your Magic Wand tool. That's going to be nested under the Quick Selection tool. And then we need to look at our option bar before we move on too far. The tolerance value right here, this number, this sets the sensitivity. So a 32 tolerance is, if we click, I'll just go in here and show you. So here's my cursor. If I were to click right here, notice it's a darker tan than maybe right down here. Whatever I click on with a 32 tolerance, it's going to select that shade, that 1 pixel, plus 32 shades darker and 32 shades lighter. So it gives you some room. A tolerance of 1, if I were to do that, it's going to say whatever this 1 pixel is, that's all we're selecting. And in a case like this, it wouldn't work at all, right? Outside here on the white, everything's white. That would work. A tolerance of 1 would work because that's all there is. So you can tweak this tolerance level. This is the default, and it's usually a pretty good one to work on. All right, so what we're first going to do is, again, I'm just going to show you. If we look at this whole image, whoops, I've even bumped mine around. Look at that. I've moved when I did the Move tool to demonstrate that, I moved the whole background around on the transparent background. So this is one flat image with a white background. And we want to select this coral off of the white. So we're going to start by using the rectangular marquee tool. And we're just going to marquee a square around the coral, the piece that we really want to target, to help it understand the pixels under here are the ones that we're dealing with right now. And then I'm going to zoom back in. So we have this marquee around it right now. Then we're going to take our Magic Wand tool, which makes color or decisions based on colors. And we have our tolerance set at 32. And then up here we have some unique options. The first one of these 4 squares is the default behavior, and that's probably where yours was set. If you look at it, it says New Selection. The next one says, come on, give me that, Add to Selection. The next one says subtract from the selection, and then the intersect with the selection. So right now our selection is this square or rectangle. And what we want to do is subtract from it just to get down to the coral. So pick that third option in the option bar. And now notice that we have a minus sign next to our magic wand. Instead of picking the white color, it's subtracting from it. So click anywhere in this white background. It took it away, and notice the marching ants are now around our shape. All right, you're going to want to see the whole picture again, so probably Command 0. Switch to your Move tool, and we're going to bring this up to letter C and place it up here. And then Command D to deselect. At this point, let's just do a file save, so if anything crashes, we're at least saved to this point. Another fun feature in Photoshop, or actually in all the Adobe family, is this autosave that can go on in the background. On Macs, it's under the name of the software that we need to go. So up at Photoshop CC, and then go to Preferences, and just go to General for now. Where are you? Well, let me just keep looking here. Workspace, Tools. Ended. Oh, is this it? File saving options. This is actually longer. I think on Illustrator you can save every 2 minutes or 1 minute. I would take that to 5 minutes. So you're getting an auto save in the background. This option didn't exist when I started using Photoshop a long time ago, and it didn't exist for a long time. And when you're actually working on something, you kind of get into it and you lose track of time. If you've ever done anything like that, where you're editing photos or having fun or compositing. And I was like 2 or 3 hours into something, hadn't saved it, and the power went out. And that's when you want to throw up or cry or all of the above. So this auto save in the background is really awesome. Make sure on any Adobe family you check that out in the preferences and you have it running. It'll totally save you. All right, where are we now? The lasso tools. This is a fun one. Let's go down to this clam thing down at the bottom, the shell, and zoom in on this bad boy. Whoa, not that big. Even that's a little too big. All right. So the lasso tools, let's go look at those. The normal lasso is the first one, and that's going to be what we use to do a freehand selection. So if we were trying to get our marching ants to go perfectly up to the edge of this using this tool, let's start clicking and dragging. As we drag, selection ants are following us around. If we screw up, well, crap, we can't do much about it. Or worse yet, somebody bumps your hand and you let go, it automatically connects to where you started. So you might be so precisely, so perfectly doing this, and you get about 3/4 of the way around, and then you forget and let go of your mouse, and So this tool is annoying, I think. But it's a really good tool when maybe your point is, you know what, I just want to select this, and then I'll use other methods of masking it out on my background, on my new background. So that worked great. That, selected a better selection. So for this item, if you really want to get right to the edges, this lasso tool is not the tool for the job. It's way too hard. Let's see. Yeah, they wanted us to use this tool for the whole thing, but I'm going to say no. We're not doing that because it would take forever. So deselect. Let's look at the next tool down, the polygonal lasso. That one works where we click to start our selection, and then every time we click, it's going to add a point. So if this is a straight line, say this is a desk and it has a straight line, this is an awesome one to know that you're making a perfectly straight line selection. In this case, we would have to just click several times as we're going around here, but know that this is going to be a bunch of straight lines. It's not going to be a soft curve. So this is not going to be the best version either, but it's a heck of a lot easier to use this lasso tool, the polygonal, than it was the freehand version. So go around with that a few times. I'm going to go back to the beginning. If you double click when you get back to your starting point, it'll connect to your starting point if it's not an obvious finish. So that tool works great for hard edges, like straight lines and 90-degree turns. We don't have that here. So let's Command D to deselect, and let's use the third version, which is the magnetic lasso tool. This is going to snap to edges when it sees them, and it's going to do a pretty good job. And if it ever doesn't add an anchor point and you want it to, all you have to do is click with your mouse. So I'm going to start right here, and then as I move around the edges, it's automatically going to put down anchor points every now and then. If I get to a spot where it's not doing it and I want one, I simply click and it'll add one there no matter what. Whoops. So go around and make your best version of a selection. We actually need to select it this time. You can see where when anything is on a certain colored background, like this is again, what tool would be super easy and perfect and fast for this? Well, there's two of them really.
Quick selection.
Quick selection would be a great choice to try, or what other one?
Magic wand.
Magic wand, because it's on a solid color background. So we could select, we could put our marquee around here and then say select everything except for the gray. We'd click on the gray and it would automatically put marching ants around the weird clam thing. All right. When you get that selected, do a Command 0 so that we can see everything, and then we need to take our move tool and we need to move this up to letter D, but obviously there's a bit of an issue. We need to rotate this. Rotating a selection is pretty simple. We're going to go under the Edit and then Transform. Where did you go? Down here. And under Transform, we see we can scale it, rotate it, skew it, distort it, and we're going to work with these in another sample file in a minute. But here's some simple things you can do. Notice right above it, there's Free Transform. When we do a free transform, it puts a bounding box around our selection, and then we can do any of these things available in the transform box using different keyboard shortcuts. So let's rotate this. And when we get our bounding box around it, if you take your cursor just off any one of the edges, it turns into the double arrow. And you can click and hold and tip it around until it matches. I got to get the short end going down so that it matches how they want us to have it on here. And then hit return to accept that transformation, or the check mark up in the top bar. And then continue with your move tool to just position it over the drop shadow here. Okay. Command D will get rid of your marching ants. And using that same magnetic lasso, we're going to select this shell right here and get that cut out also. So zoom in on it, go back to your magnetic lasso, and start just driving around the edges of this, and it will snap to the edges. This would be one where the magic wand tool would not work because we don't have a good background, and the thing itself that we're picking out is not one solid color. If the shell were basically white, we probably could try the magic
wand tool on the shell versus trying to knock out the background. When you get to this hard corner here, you might need to click once to put an anchor point there if it's not throwing one down for you as you go around your Nautilus. And once you have that reasonably selected, we're going to use the Move tool and bring it up to letter E. Position it over the drop shadow there. And then deselect, Command D. The last piece that we have to cut out is this rivet or screw or whatever this is here. So let's zoom in on that so we can see it much better. I got a little maybe too big. So this is more or less a perfect circle, and making this selection is going to be the same trickiness that we had with the oval, where, you know, to make it select a perfect circle, we're going to be holding the Shift key, but where do we start it if we're dragging down and to the right to make it fill it? So another thing that you can do is select from the center point. You can eyeball the center point, hold the keyboard modifier, and your selection will grow from the center out rather than dragging to the right and down like we normally do. All right, let's go to our elliptical marquee. And what we're going to do now is we're going to eyeball the approximate center of this screw. We're going to click and begin dragging. That's going to take us down and to the right, but right away we're going to add the Option key, and that's going to recenter it over our center point. Now notice it's an ellipse. It's doing whatever weirdness we want it to do. If we want it to be a perfect circle, we're also going to add the keyboard shortcut of Shift. So now it's pulling out a perfect circle from the center out. So get it where it's about right, and then you let go of your mouse first and then your keyboard shortcuts. So Option, you start dragging, then hold Option. That tells it to be centered, and then adding the Shift button tells it to be a perfect circle. Okay, keep your marching ants around this. Do a view fit on screen, so Command 0, so we can see everything. We're going to take our Move tool, and we're going to position it down on our screw. And once we get it over the screw, we see it turns into a scissors, saying, hey, if you move this, you're actually cutting, which is fine. We're going to drag this onto the lower right corner of the shadow box, and it's going to be way too big, and that's fine. So go ahead and drag it up there and let go and leave it. Now what we want to do is scale it down. So we're going to do that Edit, Transform, Scale. So Edit, Transform, Scale. And from here, we get our dialog in the option bar up at the top here, where we can change by percentages if we wanted to, or we can just come down to the image and we can drag a corner point down and in until we get it a lot smaller. If you're watching up at the option bar at the top while you drag, you're seeing your percentages change. It went from a width and height of 100% down to, right now I'm at 60%. So you can type it in by numbers up here, or you can drag it down here using corner handle pieces. Take your Move tool and move it back so it's kind of positioned in the corner. Then, with that still selected and with our Move tool, we're going to hold down the Option key and we're going to drag away from it, and that's going to make a copy of it. So Move tool hold Option and drag and get another one for the other corner. And then do it again, Option, drag to get a third, and then Option, drag to get a fourth. And then Command D to deselect. Okay, the last thing that we want to do is we want to crop down this image. We're going to go to our crop tool, which is the 5th tool down, and then we're going to look at our option bar and see the different options. It should be on ratio and nothing should be set. That way we can freely crop it however we want, just using the handlebars on the side or in the corner. It tells us to, in the book it says, click on this delete cropped pixels. Remember I talked about that last week, and I said when you do that, it throws them away forever, and the crop that you made is permanent. In this case, we're done. We've moved all these things. It's one flat layer. Nothing about this file is good. This is not a non-destructive file. This is a bad workflow. So it's okay probably to crop it down and throw away the pixels, but almost always I would recommend you leave that unchecked. Yes, your file is going to be bigger because it's going to keep those pixels in memory, but if you ever want to change your mind and recrop it, you can. Those pixels still exist. So for now, we are going to delete them. And then we're going to take our sidebars here, and we're just going to start moving it in and down, and we're going to crop down to just this image. And again, when we hit either enter on our keyboard or this check mark up here, it's a done deal. So if you went in too far and you say, oh shoot, I want to show more of that, it's gone because we're telling it to delete the pixels. So make sure you get it perfect before you hit OK or crop. So pull that over. And when you're done, there it is. And we made somehow, I would normally in a real world expect this to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, at least a 6-layer file, if not 7, 8, or 9. Well, and more because of all the rivets. So when you work really on layered files, all of these are floating on transparent layers above this background image, and if you want to move them, you can. If you want to resize them, you can. It's all editable. This was a one-way ticket to this. No going back. Okay? Which is why I feel the need to show you other versions. Plus, we would be done right now with this chapter. I made a horrible choice in books. It's the same one we used for Illustrator. I thought it would be great. Lesson learned. All right, everybody okay with this? Let's save it. And we are done with this. You can keep it in your files if you want to go back and look at what you did. If not, we don't necessarily ever need this again. All right, I'm going to stop this recording.